free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below. Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder. Welcome to some American T-34 heavy tank gameplay. Today's a very laid-back video. I don't want to go too deep into the debate of 6.7s and what is the best heavy tank in the game, but in general I can tell you this. The American 6.7 lineup is one of the best in the game that I've seen so far. It was extremely enjoyable having played it, and the stock grind on the T-34 was one of the easiest and most enjoyable I've had in a very long time. The match you're watching in the background is on Normandy. It is a down tier and a 3 capture point map on a 6.0 and a 6.3, which means that we are the top tier on our team, meaning that there's only one way this match is going to end up, which is of course with a lot of kills and a very, very horrible result for the Germans. It's not so much a case of performance, it's a case of the way Matchmaker had played it out. And this is also a matter of, obviously, certain statistics, it's a matter of rarity, and this is one of those matches where it just so happens that you go into a down tier instead of an up tier or a mid tier. So just keep this in mind when you're watching the gameplay. This is going to be the ruffle stop match for the T-34. This is not the accurate representation of what the tank will perform like in its run-of-the-mills Matchmaker. It's just a match that I thought was extremely enjoyable to watch from the get-go, and sort of showcases just how very aggressive the T-34 can be, and why perhaps a battle rating of 7.0 wouldn't be such a bad idea. But to touch onto the tank itself, it is perfection. For me, this is the probably closest to the ideal heavy tank that I'll find in the game. You're talking about a big gun, good armor, and very, very good maneuverability. And obviously you won't find the combination of 3 on every heavy tank, and there's going to be restrictions to each and every one of them, whether it's gun depression, whether it's gun elevation, whether it's aircraft protectability, whether it's the amount of crew members, the ammo rack location, the ammunition you can use. There's a lot of variables to, choosing what you would find as the most suitable tank for you. But what makes the T-34 for me, my current new favorite top tier heavy tank, out of course tier 4, has to be that you have a rounded up performance in a very, very good lineup. Whether you want to back this thing up with a Bearcat or maybe with the M46, the M56, I mean, there's just so many vehicles at 6.7 that you can take out as a backup that it makes the lineup so much more enjoyable to play with. But since it is so saturated, I do think that certain tanks at 6.7 at the moment should start to be pushed up to 7.0. Which tanks that should be, I really don't want to touch on this video, but I'll say the T-34 is definitely one of those that could be going up, and the M46 isn't far behind. Now for the tactics at hand. Now, I'm in a down tier. This is one of the first matches I've played. I'm obviously in the initial week. I want to see how this thing performs. So, one of the easiest ways to test an armor of a vehicle that is obviously based a lot around the armor, heavy tanks rely on armor, I wanted to see just how far I could push it. So I'm playing a little bit recklessly. I'm not trying to really side scrape. I'm not trying to play it as safe as I possibly can. I'm trying to see just how far I can push the vehicle and see how confident the enemy is with killing it. It's really just a way of testing out how very, very good a tank is. King Tiger H taken out, a Panther A taken out, and with nobody else down this street except for some more Panthers, I don't feel much of a restriction from just driving head-on into the enemy team and proceeding through their spawn. And I think it's abundantly clear just how much of a suffering it was for these two players here in the Panther A and the Porsche Tiger to try to find the weak spots on the tank, and there's just nothing that they could have done. And to add insult to injury, the Tiger also had ammunition loaded in the left-hand side of the turret, so slightly unfortunate. Now, if you're ever fighting against the T-34, it's worth knowing where the weak spots are, and frankly lower glazes is the first no-brainer. The gun port on the upper frontal hull is the second one. A perhaps lucky shot at the turret ring could be an option, the cupola or the optical drive, but really you want to go for those obvious weak spots. Go for the no-brainers, don't shoot where you normally wouldn't want to. And if the first shot doesn't go through, try another one. The likelihood is that if you play about 20 matches and you've met the tank a couple of times, eventually you'll find a place where you're obviously able to penetrate reliably. Now, is the T-34 a tough nut to crack? Yes. It is an insanely hard tank to execute, especially when in a confined environment like the city center. And this is where this tank and many heavy tanks strive from. You can angle your armor very effectively around the buildings. You can use the buildings as a main cover-up to not get flanked. And this is something that basically worked against the enemy team in this scenario. They had head-to-head engagement with the T-34, they didn't know where to penetrate it, couldn't go through the front of it, and because they weren't able to flank it or spawn an aircraft to effectively take it out, it was just a match doomed for failure. And this happens often with German teams, especially at their BRs, because they're lacking aircraft or proper aircraft support. I'll put it plainly, I think that if you're ever struggling with a tank, to kill it in a head-on engagement, whether this is a T-34 or a King Tiger or the IS-6, there's always a very effective way to take one out with an aircraft. Now, of course, to get an aircraft, that's a different story. That's why you want to refer back to my spawn point video, because there's a lot of ways one can manipulate the way spawn points work and get themselves enough to actually technically fail in their tank role, but come back and carry the team or assist their team in a aircraft. With the German team being at 6.0, majority of them spawned in either Ostwinds or Wirbelwinds, which are good tanks, even good tank destroyers, but not at a BR of 6.0. So this is where it comes to the very important discussion of lineups, and I will do a video very shortly on this, but if you don't have a good lineup set up, and you don't have a good aircraft to respawn or another medium tank, what happens is you'll often see people respawning in Panzer IVs or sort of run-of-the-mill vehicles that they just happen to have. It is very unlucky if you have a 6.0 lineup with the Germans with only one 6.0 tank available, not being able to respawn, and having to fight against a T-34, which stock round is one-shooting you through the upper frontal plate. However, this is what makes the tank that I'm playing so much more enjoyable to play. It is the fact that it's an utter monstrosity at its BR range with its gun, its stock shell penetration, and overall maneuverability to be able to really just wreak havoc on the battlefield regardless. And this is what makes it one of my newly favorite, if not the top favorite, tier 4 heavy tank in the game. And yeah, I do feel bad for the King Tiger having kind of lost its crown, but the game always goes through several changes. I mean, every patch introduces new vehicles, and new vehicles are bound to take the crown off of old ones. This has happened with planes, it's happened with tanks before, and it's going to continue happening as long as Gaijin continues to add new vehicles to the game, which kind of is their goal. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. There will come a time where the T-34 is not as well roundabout performed as something that will be newly added. It's a matter of the game adjusting and the player base having to adjust with it. It's not a bad thing. If anything, it's a good variety for the game development. And if you struggle with the T-34 or with lineups in general, having to fight against very good tanks and not knowing when to penetrate them, my main tip for you is going to be to dispatch a heavy tank, try to use the, flanking approach, or going for weak spots, or of course, approaching them with something like an aircraft that can reliably take them out regardless of the battle rating spread. This is a matter of lineups, and understanding lineups will help you get consistent good matches, whether your team is good or bad, or whether the matchmaker is working with or against you. To understand lineups, you have to understand the way Matchmaker works. It is going to line you up with whichever battle rating range is being played out the most. If you're playing 6.7 American tanks, and the majority of the spammed out vehicles at the moment are 7.3 Russians, you're likely going to face a slight up tier. If the majority of the played vehicles are 6.0 Germans, you are likely to go into a down tier or have a slower queue time. And so, for compensation of queue times, Gaijin is obviously creating a matchmaker, which in certain cases is going to put you into a down tier or an up tier to compensate for the time spent. A few things you can do to assist this is by actually looking at the matchmaker, playing different nations at different BRs, see where the up tiers or down tiers happen more often in certain time zones. And obviously, time zones will make a difference, the amount of players that are playing will make a difference, and stuff like joining progress can also make a difference on the type of matchmaker you will be put into. And of course, before I end the video, a little touch onto the 1.67 tanks that have been added. Of course, T-34, among others, the I-251, the IS-6, and the FV-4005. All great vehicles, all worthy of a slight battle rating change, definitely an increase. There's more that can be done, and I'm thinking that what happened to German teams and the German tanks at battle rating 6.7, having some being up-tiered, some being down-tiered, the de-battle rating spread is probably going to occur with the 6.7 American lineup as well, which means that even though right now the 6.7 Americans might be the strongest out of the 6.7 lineups in the game, it doesn't mean it will last forever. So do go out there, play the T-34, play the other 6.7s, they're fantastic. At some point, I'm guessing we're going to see the T-34 and the T-29 move up to 7.0. The M46 is not far behind. As for the other 6.7s, I think they're all capable of 7.0 as well, but we'll probably see what happens with 7.0 in the near future. I think if they keep that as a mainstream BR and then move the 9.0s, or the current 8.0s to 9.0 would probably fix the matchmaker quite drastically. In short though, T-34, a fantastic tank with a good gun on a great chassis with great maneuverability, performance, and overall a fantastic lineup. Maybe not the best, but by far one of the new contenders for a king.